On the night of my 81st birthday, instead of candles and cake, I watched the flames of my burning house light up the sky, set ablaze by my own children. They thought tossing me into a nursing home would be the end of me, but what they didn't know was this: the roof over their heads, the very building they lived in, belonged to me, and I was about to take it back. Before we dive in, if you're listening from your city, country, hit subscribe for more stories like this. Like if you'd stand your ground, comment your move, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. I thought they'd broken me for good. I was wrong. My name is Margaret, though most people just call me Maggie. I'm 81 years old, a retired schoolteacher, and for most of my life I believed family was everything. I raised 3 children under a roof I bought with my own hands, after working double shifts and tutoring on weekends just to make sure they never went without. I remember nights spent sewing dresses out of scraps because I couldn't afford store-bought clothes. Yet my daughters still twirled around proudly at school dances. I skipped vacations so my eldest son could go to college. I even sold my jewelry once to help my youngest start his first business. Every sacrifice, every tear, every sleepless night, I told myself it was worth it because I was building their future, and for a time it felt like I was right. Family dinners were filled with laughter, birthdays were warm, and holidays meant my little house would overflow with the smell of roasted turkey and fresh pies. I never thought those moments would fade, but little cracks began to show. My son Thomas started making excuses not to visit unless he needed money. My eldest daughter Clara began treating me less like her mother and more like her wallet. Even my youngest, sweet Emily, who used to hold my hand just across the street, began pulling away, listening more to her husband's sharp whispers than to my words. I brushed it off at first. I told myself they were busy, stressed, trying to build lives of their own. But deep down, I felt the shift. The air grew colder each time they walked through my door. Still, nothing prepared me for what would happen on my 81st birthday. I expected at least a phone call, maybe even a surprise visit. Instead, that night, the only surprise I received was the sight of my home burning to the ground, and the realization that it was no accident. It was the evening of my birthday. The nursing home staff had gathered to sing for me, placing a tiny cupcake with a single candle on the table. I smiled politely, but my heart ached. My children hadn't called. Not one message, not one visit. After the singing, I asked a nurse if she could wheel me closer to the window, and that's when I saw it. Through the glass, in the distance, smoke curled up into the sky. My chest tightened. My home, my little house, where I had lived for nearly 5 decades, was burning. Flames licked through the roof, orange and violent against the night sky. At first, I thought it had to be some cruel accident. But then, later that night, I overheard Clara's voice outside the nursing home hallway. She thought no one could hear her as she spoke into the phone. "Good, it's done. She'll never be able to go back there now." My blood ran cold. My own daughter. Her tone wasn't sad or shaken, it was satisfied. My hands trembled, my throat dry. I pressed my palm against the armrest, fighting to stay calm as my heart pounded in my chest. And when Thomas visited the next morning, not with sympathy, but with documents, asking me to sign over a few things to make it easier for everyone, the truth became undeniable. They had burned me out of my own life and tossed me into a corner. Like I was nothing more than an inconvenience. That's when I realized. The children I raised with love had turned into strangers I no longer recognized. The night after, Thomas shoved those documents in front of me. I lay in my narrow nursing home bed, staring at the ceiling. My hands were weak, my body frail, but my mind was sharper than ever. They thought by burning my home they had burned away my strength. But they had forgotten one thing. I had built my life brick by brick, dollar by dollar, and I still held the keys to something far more valuable than they realized. The next morning, I asked the nurse to call an old friend of mine, Harold, my late husband's lawyer. He was surprised to hear from me, but when I told him everything, his voice grew firm. "Maggie, you still own the Johnson building downtown, don't you?" "Yes," I whispered. "They've been living there for years, rent-free." "My gift to them. My mistake." "Then you have more power than they ever imagined." With his help, I began to move silently. First, we froze every shared account that had my name on it. Then, I updated my will, removing Thomas and Clara completely. Emily, I hesitated with her. Part of me hoped the girl I once knew was still in there, but in the end, I couldn't risk it. Next came the building. I instructed Harold to draft eviction notices. Cold, Legal, undeniable. My children thought they had trapped me in a nursing home with nothing. But the truth was, the roof over their heads belonged to me. And I was ready to pull it away. Lily, one of the younger nurses at the home, became my quiet ally. She'd sit with me in the evenings, helping me type letters and emails. Her eyes would widen as she listened. "They really did that to you," she whispered once. "Yes," I said, my jaw tight. "And now, they'll learn what it feels like to lose everything." Piece by piece, I rebuilt control. I secured my savings in a private account. I changed the locks on the storage unit that held my valuables. I even contacted the pension office to make sure no one could touch a cent without my signature. The more I worked, the more a strange strength returned to me. For weeks, I had felt like a victim, discarded and helpless. But now I felt the fire in my veins again. Not the kind that destroyed my home, but the kind that had carried me through decades of struggle. And when Harold placed the final signed eviction papers in my hands, he looked at me with a half-smile. "They think you're weak, Maggie. They're about to find out just how wrong they are." But I also knew my children weren't going to let me go down without a fight. The first wave of pushback came only days after Harold sent out the eviction notices. Clara stormed into the nursing home, her heels clattering against the linoleum floor, her perfume sharp and overwhelming. She didn't even greet me. She just slammed the folded letter onto my bedside table. "What is this, Mother? You're kicking us out. After everything we've done for you." Her voice was high-pitched, dripping with indignation, as if she were the victim. I looked at the letter calmly, then at her. For years I had allowed her guilt trips to sway me, to make me feel like I owed her more, but not this time. "Everything you've done for me," I asked softly, "or everything I've done for you?" She opened her mouth to argue but had no answer. When guilt didn't work, Thomas tried a different angle. He came late one evening, flowers in his hand and a forced smile plastered across his face. "Mom," he began, sitting on the edge of my bed, "maybe we got off on the wrong foot. We've all been under stress. Clara didn't mean what she said. Emily's husband has been pressuring her. Can't we just start fresh?" His tone was syrupy, the kind he used as a child when he wanted extra allowance. He even reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. For a fleeting second, I almost believed him, but then I remembered the flames consuming my house, his eager face when he pushed those documents at me. I pulled my hand away. "Fresh starts aren't built on ashes, Thomas, not when you lit the fire yourself." His smile faltered, and the flowers slipped from his hand onto the floor. Then came the public confrontation. Clara and Thomas dragged Emily along, cornering me in the common room of the nursing home in front of other residents. Emily's eyes were red, and she wouldn't meet my gaze. Clara's voice was sharp as a knife. "You're embarrassing us, Mother. Do you have any idea how it looks? Throwing your own children out into the street. People are talking. Do you want everyone to think you're cruel?" She gestured wildly, as if the residents around us were her jury. Some looked uncomfortable, others curious, but I sat still, hands folded in my lap. "Cruel," I repeated slowly. "Cruel is setting fire to your mother's house on her birthday. Cruel is signing papers to strip her of everything she worked for. Don't talk to me about appearances." It was Emily who broke then, her voice trembling. "Mom, please, I didn't want this. It was Clara's idea. I thought you'd be safe here, and we could handle things better." She looked at me, finally meeting my eyes, and for a moment I saw the little girl I used to walk to school. But her weakness cut deeper than her siblings' cruelty. She hadn't fought for me. She had stood by and let it happen. Their escalation didn't stop at words. Thomas threatened legal action, claiming I was mentally unfit. Clara tried to rally distant relatives, spinning tales of my paranoia. Emily begged for more time, sending long, tearful voicemails, but I had already steeled myself. Their attempts only proved one thing: they were desperate. And desperation makes people careless. One afternoon, Lily handed me her phone, her eyes wide. "You need to hear this," she whispered. She had accidentally overheard Thomas and Clara arguing in the lobby. Thomas hissed, "We should have made her sign everything before we burned it down. Now she's got the upper hand." Clara snapped back, "Shut up, idiot. Do you want the whole world to hear?" My chest tightened, but not with fear. For the first time in weeks, I felt a dark satisfaction bloom. They had just confessed, and I knew then the mistake they made would be the very rope they'd hang themselves with. The showdown came on a gray Monday morning, inside the lawyer's downtown office. Harold had arranged the meeting, insisting it was the only way forward. My children arrived together, their faces tense, their eyes darting with a mixture of anger and fear. They expected weakness. They expected an old woman trembling in her wheelchair, begging for mercy. What they got instead was me, sitting upright, documents spread neatly in front of me, and Harold by my side. Thomas was the first to speak, his voice low but sharp. "When you laughed about sending me here, thinking I'd fade away. Don't lecture me about cruelty." The color drained from her face. Thomas reached for the papers, but Harold's firm hand stopped him. "That's admissible evidence," Harold said smoothly. "And trust me, the police would be very interested." Emily shifted uncomfortably in her chair, tears glistening in her eyes. "Mom, please. I didn't set the fire. I didn't stop them." Her voice broke, and for a moment, my chest ached. She was guilty, but not in the same way. She had chosen silence, and silence had betrayed me as deeply as flames. Thomas's composure cracked then. He slammed his hand on the table. "You can't do this. We're your children. Without us, you have no one." His words echoed in the room, raw and desperate. I leaned forward, my voice calm but sharp as a blade. "Without you, I raised myself. Without parents, I built my life without help. I sacrificed everything to give you comfort. And what did you give me in return? Betrayal, arson, abandonment." My eyes narrowed. "You were wrong, Thomas. I have more than you think. I have truth. I have strength. And most importantly, I still have choices." Then I dropped the final blow. Signed eviction papers, effective immediately, along with the legal order removing them as beneficiaries from my estate. The sound of the papers hitting the table was louder than any shout. Clara's lips trembled. "You can't." "I just did," I interrupted. My voice didn't rise, but the weight of it filled the room. "The roof you burned over my head is gone, and now, the roof over yours will vanish too. That's justice." Thomas tried to protest again, but Harold cut him off. "If you fight this, your mother will take the recording straight to the authorities. You'll be facing charges, not just eviction." For the first time, I saw real fear in my son's eyes. Clara slumped back, silent, her hands trembling. Emily sobbed quietly, unable to meet my gaze. I gathered the papers into a neat stack and looked at each of them, one by one. "This ends today. You will leave my building. You will leave my accounts. You will leave me in peace. I gave you everything I had, and in return, you tried to destroy me. Now you will live with the ashes you created." With that, I pushed back from the table, Harold steadying me as I rose. My legs trembled, but not from weakness, from the surge of finality coursing through me. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid. I was free. And as I walked out of that office, their stunned silence followed me, the sound of a dynasty collapsing under its own greed. It has been 6 months since that day in Harold's office, and my life is almost unrecognizable. I no longer wake up to the sterile white walls of the nursing home. Instead, I rise to the soft golden light pouring through the windows of a small cottage on the edge of town. It's not the same house I lost, but in many ways, it feels better. It's mine, it's peaceful, and most importantly, it's safe. The nursing home staff threw me a farewell party when I left, their kindness washing away the bitterness of what I had endured. Lily, my young ally, still visits every week, bringing flowers and updates from the city. She sits across my kitchen table, sipping tea, and reminds me that loyalty can come from the most unexpected places. In her, I found the family my own blood had refused to be, and what of my children? The eviction went through. The Johnson building no longer belongs to them. One by one, they moved out, their belongings spilling onto sidewalks, their pride stripped bare. Clara's designer clothes couldn't hide the panic on her face as she tried to explain to neighbors why they were being forced out. Thomas raged, his voice echoing through the halls, but rage doesn't pay rent. And Emily. She wept. Her husband left her soon after, unwilling to stay in a life without the free roof he had relied on. I've heard whispers of their struggles. Thomas is renting a cramped apartment far from the city, working jobs he once sneered at. Clara is living with a friend, her expensive handbags sold off piece by piece. Emily came to me once, her face pale, her voice trembling as she asked for forgiveness. I listened quietly, my heart aching with the memory of the little girl who once clung to my hand. I told her I wished her peace, but forgiveness is not the same as forgetting. She chose silence when I needed her voice most, and silence has consequences. Do I feel satisfaction in their downfall? A part of me does. But more than that, I feel clarity. For too long, I believed love was proven through sacrifice. I gave and gave, thinking it would bind them to me with gratitude and loyalty. But what I learned is that unconditional giving, without boundaries, breeds entitlement. They didn't love me less because I was strict or distant, they loved me less because I made it too easy to take doubt. Now my days are filled with quieter joys. I tend to my small garden. I read novels by the fireplace. On Sundays, I bake pies, just as I once did, but I share them with Lily and her family instead. There is laughter in my home again, not forced, not demanded, but freely given. Sometimes, late at night, I think of the flames. I think of my house crumbling into ash, the smoke rising into the sky like a funeral pyre for the years I lost. But then I remind myself, ashes are not the end. From ashes, new life grows. From destruction, clarity comes. If you're listening to my story, I want you to remember this. Family is not defined by blood, but by love, loyalty, and respect. Do not let guilt trap you into believing you owe endless sacrifice to those who betray you. Protect yourself, set boundaries, and do not be afraid to take back control when someone crosses the line, because when I finally stopped paying for love, I discovered who truly loved me. Sometimes, losing everything is the only way to find out what really matters. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and share it with your friends. In the comments, tell me 2 things. 1. What topic should my next story be about? 2 out of 10. How many marks would you give this story? I'll be waiting to read your thoughts.